Okay, hi everyone. Welcome to the Horizon 2023. I hope you've been enjoying the Horizon so far. So this is Kemp from Melbourne. I'm the host of this session. So the session is brought to you by Harvey. He's based in Melbourne. He's part of our co-team. So he's going to talk about the ARC Plus, the most advanced developer experience for PA/TM1. So if you do have any questions during the presentation, please feel free to leave that in the Q&A session. We'll try to answer the questions during the presentation. And also, we do have a sort of a small amount of time reserved towards the end of the presentation for the Q&A. If you want to ask questions till then, you can also do it. However, in between the presentation and the Q&A, I'm going to pop up a survey so that you can, provide your feedbacks to us, because your feedbacks are super important to us. So now, without any further delay, I'll hand this over to Harvey.
Thanks, Kemp. Okay, my name's Harvey Withington. I'm from the CubeWise Code team, coming at you from Melbourne, Australia. And I'll just share my screen. It's always the hardest bit. Okay. So today I'm going to talk to you about ARC Plus, the most advanced developer experience for IBM Planning Analytics, even if we do say so ourselves. So this is pertinent to the application lifecycle, which hopefully you're familiar with. If you're not, here they are. I've got a slide on it, so let me just switch. Okay, so the phases of the application lifecycle are planning, develop, test, migrate, and support. I won't read out the slide. You can read it as we go. But our goal in the CubeWise Code team has always been to optimize efficiency, reduce maintenance, encourage standardization and best practice across all the disparate phases of the planning analytics implementation lifecycle. And as such, we have attempted to plug the gaps by creating several applications and tools over the years. So we've got ARC. ARC's for developers primarily, or at least classically has been. We've got Pulse for administrators and support people. We've got Slice and Applico UX, which is targeted at end users and designing applications for them. And we also have our open source and community-driven Bedrock and TM1 Pi, which are also for developers, but more of a community-driven project. So as you can see, it's been somewhat like a very extended and expensive game of whack-a-mole to plug all of the gaps in the implementation lifecycle. So ARC itself has always aimed to offer many benefits over the default tools that come with planning analytics. If we compare Workspace, you can see from the diagram here that both have always supported the phases of develop and support. Workspace and ARC have typically been targeted at the same phases, but ARC Plus is intended to change all that. So we're looking in the future to fulfill the needs of the entire application lifecycle. Now, the initial phase of this is to integrate Pulse features inside ARC, which will give us the support and administration phase. But the greater goal is actually more ambitious than that. ARC Plus is set to take TM1 professionals places we've never been before. And I'll give you a bit of a taste of that during the presentation. So if you happen to be a planning analytics developer who wears many hats, and I've never met one who didn't, ARC Plus is the tool for you, and even more so going forward. Okay, so ARC and Pulse integration, it's available right now. We've got best practice validation, we've got comparing dimensions, advanced monitoring, full model search, object usage tracking, and a few additional things. And coming up, we've got a testing feature, chores, process history, who's doing what, and integrating documentation. In this presentation, I'm going to take you through how to activate ARC Plus, show you the features already included in the current 4.2 release, and give you a bit of a teaser for what's on the roadmap in the next year or so. And if you're a tech nerd like me, it's pretty exciting. So yeah, if there are any questions, as Kemp said, you can ask them in the chat or use the Q&A feature. I'll answer them at the end. But we've already spoken too much. Let's see something in action. So I'm going to fire up Arc, or at least I've already got it fired up. And if you're watching this on a small screen or even on a laptop, it's probably best to go full screen so that you can see the full glory of the application as I present it. Okay, so this is what Arc looks like when you run it now in the current release. Actually, this is not the current release. This is a little bit advanced of the current release, but I'll show you that in a sec. And as you can see here, the main difference is you've got this pulse icon down here. You may have seen that in your version of Arc and wondered what it does. Well, you can click on it and it gives you a bit of a status about your pulse connection. In this case, we're not connected, so it gives you an error and just a bit of a taste of what Arc Plus is intended to do. You can click this Find Out More button and it'll give you instructions on how to connect. We're not going to do that because it's 3 lines in your settings file. So we give it a pulse URL. In my case, that's localhost, but yours might be on a server or wherever. We give it pulse environment, which is the name that you gave your environment in Pulse when you first set it up. And we're going to set pulse tracking to true. That means that Arc will now start sending data to Pulse so Pulse can report on it. It's that easy, 3 lines, no big deal. So if you do need help at any stage, though, this or this link will always get you back to the help document to be able to do it. So if we refresh, everything's green. So end of presentation, everything's perfect. Just kidding. No, there's more. But it's always nice to see a green indicator. You'll also notice that now we have this documentation tab here as well with a few buttons. What that does is enables you to get the Pulse documentation that you might be familiar with if you have Pulse from the Pulse server. These just come through as PDFs. I'll give you an example of, say, the flow diagram. All right. So if you haven't seen the Pulse flow diagram, that's what it looks like. It's a pretty cool feature that lets you see all of the connections between all of the disparate objects in your TM1 model. So that's pretty handy, but it's nothing more than what Pulse would give you out of the box. It's just now we can do it from Arc. You've also got a few things down here saying what the current features are and what's coming soon. So, but again, this is not quite up to date in the current version. So we're going to go a bit further than that. Okay, so the other thing you might notice that's changed is the Pulse connection icon up here. So if we click on that, it'll show you that you're connected to Pulse and all is good. But you'll notice that the indicator here is yellow. We really want it to be green. We want everything to be green. Green is our favorite color. So we need to log in to do that. So if I just mouse over this, it'll tell you what's wrong. Connection to Pulse, not logged in. Okay, well, let's log into Pulse. So I have admin log into Pulse, so I'm going to use that. That way we'll have access to all of the features. So admin, and I'm not going to tell you my password, but it's definitely not Pulse, so don't even try it. And now we're logged in, we have a green light, and we can finally calm down and relax because everything is green, and that must mean it's good. So I'll close the Pulse connection page, and you can see now something else that's changed is these little dots here. These dots are the service status coming out of Pulse. So we've made by default, they're quite compact and small, but if you prefer, you can come in here and customize them. So if you like the icon set that Pulse uses, you can set it to that and save, and it'll show them as big ticks instead. If one of the services came down, you would see it in here. It would turn red, orange, whatever. And if you get any kind of other notification in Pulse, it'll show here as well. So you don't need to keep switching between applications to monitor the status of your servers. It's right here in one little dot. You'll also notice, oh, actually, if we click on one of those also, it'll give you the sessions screen. So the old Arc session screen started below this line of widgets here. This is a a new feature that's added in once you connect to Pulse. And this is telling you the memory usage, CPU usage, how many waiting users, and all of that stuff that comes out of Pulse. You can reorder these if you want to. So if you decide that the memory usage is the most important thing, you might want to drop that on the left. And if you don't like the look of it for some reason, or if you prefer to do it, there's a few different options in here. One is to use dials. As you can see here, this is a slightly more visual representation, although it's not very exciting until you actually start running some stuff, and then it all starts to fire right up. I don't know how many I should do, but hopefully not too many, because we do have to wait till they finish at some point. You can see here the waiting users springs up. The runtime will keep counting up, and so on and so forth. And our server is under a lot of stress and very upset right now. So all of this data comes out of Pulse, and if you look in Pulse, you'll see it's got exactly the same numbers. So the other main change in the user interface is that you now have other nodes underneath the Pulse node down here, which give you the additional pages that you can access. So just go through these quickly. You've got search model. So this is actually in-object search. So it actually searches the text of rules and TI processes and so on. It doesn't just use the name of the file or of the TM1 object. So we can search for, let's say one thing I used that you can see in my search history there is I was trying to look for the name of the process that does bedrock wait. And I knew it called sleep, or it had the word sleep in it. So I type sleep. It gives me bedrock.server.wait, and you can see here it's got the word sleep in there. So that was one way that I used it to find something just before. But something that you might do in the real world is general ledger. This will give you a list of all the objects that are related to the general ledger. So you can see here you've got general ledger measure, of course. You've got the rule, you've got the cube. But you've also got some drills that drill to the general ledger as well. You can open it up and see that the TI actually drills into the general ledger. So that's something that would be very hard to find out. You'd have to go through all of your drill processes one by one to work out how many things drill into the general ledger. And then you see this elements cube. Why would that have it? Well, because general ledger measure is actually the measures dimension of that. It's just a test object I created. It's not a real cube. You can also see, of course, all the rules that feed to the general ledger. So that's very useful as well to get that all in one place. And you can probably just trust my word for it that all the other objects have the word general ledger in there somewhere. So that's a pretty useful utility, as is the change tracking. So you can see here, this is just a list of all the changes that have happened between the date ranges that are selected in the page here. You can refresh it just to get a new list whenever you want to. And you can actually click in here and see what changes have been made. Unfortunately, I've just been rehearsing this presentation, so I've changed it back and forth. But let's do it again, and you'll be able to see that we actually get notified of every change as well. So if I go into the process and find that error one and make a change in the prologue, I'm just going to add a comment. I'll save that. Now it takes a little while because Pulse works on a cycle, so it doesn't detect changes immediately. But I'm pretty confident if you start to hold your breath right now and you only let go when the notification comes, there you go. So you would have been fine. It wouldn't have been more than 4 minutes and caused brain damage. So you're in good hands. I wouldn't put you in that sort of danger. But yeah, so any notification that you get out of Pulse, whether you've set up alerts or whether a server goes down or anything else that generates an alert in Pulse, will also generate an alert in Arc, which is extremely handy. You don't have to switch between the applications to see them. And again, you can see here our change to the error.profile has appeared in here as well. The other page that I want to show is the compare tool. This is, again, a very handy feature, like could save some amazing heavy lifting in the long run. So I'm going to log into a second server. We'll use test framework. And then that becomes available in here. So I can actually compare two dimensions that are on different servers, which is something that's been very difficult to do typically in the past. So in test framework, I'll just leave, well, what do I have in here? Account 2. I'll just call it account. I'll just compare the two account dimensions. That's probably the easiest way to go. So these are two different account dimensions across two different servers. And there's 3 modes. So we've got the quick mode. That'll tell you if the count of the dimensions or the basic statistics of the dimension are different. So it's got the same number of attributes and the same number of levels, but everything else is different. So obviously there's differences between these two dimensions. So you can look at the inline view, which just gives you a single table of everything that's different between the two dimensions. And as you can see here, this 1160 and 1165 has all been added. There's also a test and a shan. We do a lot of weird testing on the CubeWise code team. Yeah, I've got all that involved. And we can also do the beside view, which you might prefer. It's pretty much the same data, but just presented with each dimension separately, side by side, so you can compare them that way. One thing to be aware of is, of course, set your maximum elements to something intelligent, because if you set that to 1 million, the comparison can take quite a while. So, but again, a very useful feature and something that hasn't been available up until now. Now I'm going to skip the test center for a second and just show you a few other things, because for me, the test center is the piece de resistance, or yeah, I shouldn't try to say French words. That's stupid. But anyway, it's the grand finale. Actually, that's also French. Everything's French, so I can't really avoid it. Anyway, there's one other feature that I want to show you first. So let's go into the employee rules. Okay. Now I showed you earlier the pulse validation report. So you can click that. You can generate a validation report, and you can get all of the issues that arise in the current instance in one big document. And that's really handy. It's really good for handing to IT or giving to a developer and saying, you know, attend to all of these or whatever. It's not that good if you're in the middle of writing your rules and you want to know whether you're following best practice or not. So what we've done is we've integrated the pulse validation into the rule editor. So now we've got this validate code using pulse button, and you can click that at any point, and it'll give you a list of all of the issues that it finds for this particular set of rules. You can see down here also it's highlighted the lines that are associated with it. So you can get a big list if you prefer. And you can click over here to get to the line that's being complained about. And you can see here when you mouse over, it'll give you a description out of Pulse of what the rule says that you should do. This is pretty handy because obviously as you're developing, you can attend to these problems without having to generate a document or print it out and read it, or go through a big list or whatever. It's also really handy if you're setting up, if you're an administrator using Pulse and you're setting up validation rules for the organization that you work for. So let's say in your organization, you've got a general ledger and the performance isn't going so well. And you find out that developers who will not be named are overfeeding the general ledger because they're not sure how to write a good feeder or be efficient with it. So one way you might deal with that is to go into Pulse and create a custom validation rule. So let me just log in. And I promise I'm not typing Pulse right now. And we'll go into the administration section and the validation rules. And you can see there's a list of all the default rules here. I've added a new one. I don't want to do this in front of you because number one, it would just be boring. And number two, it involves writing regular expressions, which can be quite challenging and I'd probably screw it up. But the idea of this rule is to detect overfeeding or detect any feeding of the GL cube. So what we're going to do is we're going to type a regular expression that will trigger whenever we see close bracket feed DB, general ledger. The rest of it's just padding and whatever, allowing for all of that kind of stuff. And we're going to put in the message, you are feeding the general ledger from this cube. Make sure you don't overfeed and slow down GL reporting. You could be a lot more pointed than that, but that's a nice way to put it, I think. And we'll just enable that and save. And we'll go back and we click our validation again. And you can see now we've got 9 issues, and feeding GL cube is one of them. And if I scroll down, you can see here, that's our message coming up. So it's a really good way to get a message out to developers that you want to have responded to in real time. All right, so for the last little bit, the test center, let's have a look at it. So typically, testing in TM1 hasn't really been a thing at all. And that's probably because a lot of TM1 consultants come from accounting backgrounds and not IT backgrounds. But as someone who did come from an IT background, it's initially quite a terrifying prospect that you're writing all this code and stuff, and there's no safety net of testing to catch it. So what we're doing is adding unit testing capabilities to TM1. And I'll just show you quickly because we're nearly out of time, but you can create unit tests here, and you can create collections of unit tests. So the collections are what you run, and they'll run each test in sequence and tell you whether it passed or failed, basically. So if we have a look at one of these unit tests, you can see it's got just name and description. You can give it a category. That's what the coloring is, makes it look pretty. And in the execution, you give it the object that you want to test, right? So in this case, we're just testing bedrock.server.wait. It's a good one to test because it doesn't do anything and it won't destroy your model. You've got setup and teardown. That's just a TI script that you can run before you do the action. And then you have assertions, and this is what tests whether or not you're passing or failing your test. So if we have just a quick look in there, this is testing if operating profit is bigger than 0. And you have to go in and check the general ledger with the operating profit to see if the amount is greater than 0. And then you just set greater than or equal and then 0. Now, if we go back to collections, we can see that that one's actually included in this test. And if we click test, this import CapEx data one is the one that we just looked at. And you can see that fails. The reason it fails is because our operating profit is less than 0. It shouldn't be. We're not doing very well. So it's something that you might want to be alerted by. And the only other thing that's really going to solidify this testing as a sort of more cultural thing is we're integrating it all the way through ARC. So if I go into, say, the general ledger and view it, and I want to test this cell, right? So 873.66. I want to check that that cell is equal to that or greater than that or something else. I can right click, say create a new test. I can give it whatever details, but it gives some defaults here. I can give it a category if I want to, general ledger. And you can see in here, it's already created the assertion for me because that's quite a complicated part of the process. So I can say greater than 0. Okay, save. I can add that into my test collection. So we'll go into the entries and find it. I think it's this one. Let's get rid of that. And now when we do our test, it'll run that one as well. So let's see if it passes. It should do. All right, it did pass. So that means that, yeah, our test has been successful. So I think I need to stop there. Kemp, have I got time to do anything else, or is that about right?
You still got a few minutes. I think you can continue.
All right, I'll show you very quickly the data collection features in Pulse. So I'll just go back into Pulse. Let's go to reports and performance. And then Pulse Explorer. So this opens Kibana, and silently in the background, the whole time we've been doing this presentation, Pulse has been collecting data on everything that I did. So I've created a little dashboard here, which shows, if I make it so year to date, this shows all the interactions that are being monitored over the last year. So you can see here, I edited a lot of processes. Don't know why that is, but probably I was creating a TI library or something like that. And you can see here it monitors opening views, subsets, any cells, rules, and processes. And if I go into Explore and show you the table itself, so you can see here, this is all of the list of everything that's been done. And you'll notice here that if I just sort correctly, so you'll see here, this is the stuff that we just did. So opening the general ledger, default view, and so on. All of the stuff that we've just been doing in the presentation has been tracked and logged. Sorry, here it is. So this was opening the error TI, this is opening the employee cube, and this is opening the default view of the general ledger. So you can imagine that's going to give you all sorts of insights into user behavior and so on. And it can go down to the user as well. So it tells you that it was the admin that was logged in, which server, and so on. So yeah, it's very useful. You can create dashboards and customize that in any way you see fit. I haven't put in much time, but if you do, it'll pay big rewards. All right. Should we open it to questions?
Before we do it, so Harvey, I'll just change back to the camera. So basically, thanks for your presentation. So before we go into the Q&A, I'll quickly pull up the feedback page.
Yes,
so then
good idea.
If you can spend some time to do the feedback for us, that'll be great, because your feedback is super important to us. We can make this Horizon better. So I'll give you a minute or two to finish that. But while you are doing the feedback, so there are a few questions that I haven't answered. Okay. The latest one will be, I think I can answer this one. Is the monitor kept it fit to the company, or does CW or Kitwise have access to the logs in real time? So basically, Kitwise wouldn't have access to the post log. All the log is stored in where your post is hosted. If your post is hosted on a TM1 server, only the company, the customer, can have access. Unless you are willing to share with us for some benchmarking, that's another story. But we don't have access, so you do have full privacy on that.
It would be voluntary if it was shared.
Yeah. And then there's another question: are edges the same as defined in the graph theory? I'm not quite sure I understand that question, Kevin. So
edges the same as defined in graph theory. Kevin, I will have to get back to you on that after studying for several years, I think. Yeah.
Probably how we get touch base with you, in the networking session, like the platform here.
Sure. Yeah,
and there's another one
for lounge, and we'll talk about that. You might need to explain a bit further.
Yeah, there's another one for David Wise. Is there thought to decommission Post, a separate application now? It's mostly integrated with Arc.
Yes, there's been some talk about whether Arc could be the front end for Pulse, but there's a lot of work to do before that could even be considered. So for the time being, we're going to keep the same both user interfaces. But yeah, who knows? In a year or two. Yeah, Pulse will always be a separate server application. It may just have its front end integrated into Arc.
It might be hidden in the back end, right? We probably not emphasize in the future, but in the back end, we still need a Pulse to be able to capture all the activities and logs and put them into the database. Okay, is there any further question? If not, then thanks again, everyone, for joining us, and thanks, Harvey, for such a good presentation. So I'll probably end the session from now, but if you do have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. And also, if you're interested, look at the TM1 Team Championship. That would be really interesting. I hope you enjoy the rest of probably 16 or whatever hours remaining to the Horizon 2023. Thank you. See you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.